Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamanatira Vanachadi Jamunatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodhanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamanatira Vanachadi Jamanatira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtatarasata Srimad His Divine Grace Isi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi Srimad Bhagavatam Okay. Your wife is coming or just now coming? Okay. She's facing her space mask. So we've been reading from Canto 10, Chapter 8, which is, the specific section is Krishna's showing inside his mouth the universe. When his friends were saying he ate dirt, he said, I didn't eat dirt. They're liars. Then Mother Jasoda says, then open your mouth, let me see. That's where we are. So text 36, Canto 10, Chapter 8. Mother Yashoda challenged Kṛṣṇa. If you have not eaten earth, then open up your mouth wide. When challenged by his mother in this way, Kṛṣṇa, the son of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, to exhibit pastimes like a human child, opened his mouth. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kṛṣṇa, who is full of all opulences, did not disturb his mother's parental affection, his opulence was automatically displayed, for Kṛṣṇa's opulence is never lost at any stage, but is manifest at the proper time. So we're going to hear commentary that covers the following things. In the text, the last line is Kṛḍā Manuja Balaka. Kṛḍā means pastimes of Manuja Balaka, human-like form and activities and pastimes. And so in keeping with the childlike, he opens his mouth. But then there's another part of this, which is his Aishvarya, his opulence, his majesty, his divinity. So he's childlike, so it goes back and forth. Simultaneously, his divinity, the Aishvarya, or opulence feature of him, of Bhagavan, and the human-like, childlike feature of Bhagavan. He did what he did. There's several things. He did what he did without disturbing her motherly affection. At the same time, he showed his divinity, which was contrary to motherly affection. But he did it in such a way it wasn't disturbing to her motherly affection. And then another point is, Kṛṣṇa always has his unlimited opulences. We'll hear some more about it, but the opulence that Kṛṣṇa had was present even in the prison house of Kamsa. And the opulence that Kṛṣṇa had was even when he was just a few days old and killed Putana. The power, the unlimited power of Kṛṣṇa is within Kṛṣṇa, regardless of his Leela. And then, in what way does that unlimited power of Kṛṣṇa display itself? Well, we're going to hear. He doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to go, okay, I'll show you, or something like that. He just, it happens of its own accord. At the right time, the right way. And that's a feature of Kṛṣṇa that this pastime wants us to understand this particular verse, and so the commentary is covering that repeatedly. So here's the purport. This is Srila Prabhupada's purport. Without disturbing the ecstasy of his mother's affection, Kṛṣṇa opened his mouth and displayed his own natural opulences. When a person is given varieties of food, there may be 101 varieties, but if one likes ordinary shak or spinach, he prefers to eat that. Similarly, although Kṛṣṇa was full of opulences, now by the order of Mother Yashoda, he opened wide his mouth like a human child and did not neglect the transcendental humor of maternal affection. Little boy, mommy says, open your mouth, so he opens his mouth. So the childlike and the Aishvarya-like features are both being exhibited at the same time. That's the emphasis here. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, Kṛṣṇa, afraid of punishment, told a lie in order that Yashoda could not detect his fault. How could he do this, however? If he were to open his mouth, the evidence would be found. The answer is given. That is, he possesses unimpeded, non-contradictory power. The Sanskrit phrase is avyahat aishvarya. He whose power is undefeated does not seek out this power because of the influence of sweetness, of love. So predominating for Kṛṣṇa is the intimacy with Mother Yashoda. But looking for service, this avyahat aishvarya, this unimpeded and non-contradictory power, is looking for some service, and it finds some opportunity inspired by the boy's power of satya sankalpa. Satya sankalpa means whose very desire must be fulfilled. He didn't have to do anything. He just contemplates. He thinks in the direction of, and voila. Satya sankalpa makes it happen. And then the opulences, this unimpeded, non-contradictory opulence goes. But looking for service, it finds some opportunity, inspired by the boy's power of Satya Sankalpa, that is, whose desire must be fulfilled. This unimpeded Aishvarya on its own manifested the universal form, and Yashoda, lost in astonishment, forgot to scold her son. Then comes an interesting sentence. Was it necessary for Kṛṣṇa to taste the sweetness of prema? Is there something lacking in him that if he's feeling unfulfilled and so he's got to do something to taste something? And thus have to show fear of being beaten, like a little child might do? He could have stood there without fear, taking the help of his Aishvarya Shakti, thinking, I am the Lord? The answer is found, that is it necessary? The answer is found in the words Kṛṣṇa Manuja Balaka, which means Kṛṣṇa was taking the form of a human child to perform mainly playful, sweet pastimes, which is another manifestation of his power of Satya Sankalpa. It's described in Ramayana that when the demigods, when this Rishishringa was performing his yajna for Dasarath to have sons, simultaneously in the heavenly realm, the demigods had gone to Brahma saying, do something, this Ravana is terrible. And you gave him some boons that he can't be. So fix the problem. You created a problem for us. So they went to Vishnu. Vishnu said, very soon I'll appear. So Brahma then instructed the demigods, you make arrangements to assist the Supreme Lord in making his appearance and create offspring in different species. And those offspring should have powers that they can do mystical things like assume any form they want. So it was a foretold statement by Brahma that those that were going to assist Ram in his battle against Ravana, they would have what Sadhuputta calls shape-changing powers. Kind of like what we talked this morning about Putana. In Krishna's pastimes, they could assume different forms. And how did they do that? They just willed it. They had some, as Krishna has the capacity, some power from Krishna, some mystic power. They can just change their shape at will. But something that always makes that different is when death comes, then they assume the original shape. Because it's a spell, it's a power. And when the life energy is gone, that power is lost. But the power comes from Yogeshwara. So Krishna he doesn't have to do anything. He just wills something and voila. So he appears as forearm Vishnu. He assumes a childlike form. He's taken to Gokula, and he performs pastimes of a child. And it's just his shape. He's not growing. Our bodies undergo change. His body doesn't undergo change like our bodies undergo change. His body doesn't grow old and die. Our bodies grow old and die, for sure. So there's no changing of body for him. It's just he's manifesting a particular form to suit his desire for enjoyment. That's his rasa. And he's fulfilling the desire of his devotees. That's their experience of his rasa, thus their rasa, their mood of service and love to him. So he doesn't have to do anything. Then we had this discussion. It's the same topic of he's Atmarama but not Atmarama. Well, it's either this or that. If it's this, then it's not that. If it's that, it's not this. But how is it both? There's nothing he needs to do. And yet he does things. And he does things for his own pleasure and for the pleasure of his beloved devotees. So he didn't have to manifest the universal form. His own potencies manifested that universal form. He doesn't have to do anything. But he does things. And he does things through the agencies of his potencies. And he doesn't do things because he needs things. We're not like that. We do things because we need something. We want something. So we do something. So supposing you get to the place where you don't need anything. You still do things. But you do things out of love, and in a relationship with the personality Godhead, and the personality Godhead similarly does that in relation to us. And that's the sweetness and the opulence combined. They're both coming from his Satya Sankalpa potency. And they look like, we'll hear. When the opulence is presented, it has a tendency to overshadow or curb or diminish intimacy. Majesty diminishes intimacy. And at the same time, Kṛṣṇa is exhibiting both, but he does it in such a way that it doesn't diminish the intimacy. Because Satya Sankalpa, his desires fulfill, his potencies fulfill all his desires. And it's an important understanding about Kṛṣṇa, and it's important to understand Kṛṣṇa, to understand devotional service. Namely, just like chanting. We're all chanting. So we know something about the Nija Sarva Shaktis. All potencies are within the holy name. But that doesn't diminish our sense of connection with the holy name. It inspires us. But in and of itself, it's not sufficient. We can know the glories of the holy name and still be distracted. That's commonly the case. So what makes the attraction? It's the sweetness. It's the sense of connection, not just the majesty of the almighty name or the almighty Kṛṣṇa, but the exchange of loving dealing. One enhances the other, and vice versa. Okay, so go on. Jiva Goswami's comment reads, in this pastime, Kṛṣṇa is Bhagavan, endowed with eternal, unlimited powers, which cause restriction of love in the mind. But he is also Hari, auspiciousness with predominant revelation of sweetness, which attracts the mind. He exists without completely giving up certain of his powers, though he does not care for these powers in these pastimes. These powers remain near him and always wait for the opportunity of his particular pastime where they can serve him. He is a human child through his pastimes. He is a child endowed with associates like Nanda and Yashoda, who are part of his eternal pastimes. Unlike humans, bound by Maya and karma, as the scriptures state, he is endowed with eternal pastimes. Both he and they make their appearance by his will for producing rasa in his pastimes. It's the same topic, just another layer of it. He doesn't need anything, and yet he does things. He manifests himself and his associates and his pastimes for the taste of rasa, although he's already full. So he can withdraw them too. And then they become aprakat. We were discussing that. Unmanifest pastimes, they're eternal. Then sometimes he manifests them. And so why does he, what's the prompt for him to manifest them? He doesn't have anything to achieve. One can say, it says, it's one of the questions asked in Canto 1, Chapter 1, What's the purpose behind the Lord's exhibiting his pastimes? That's a good question. So it's to attract back to the eternal realm those who are in the mode of goodness, and to give benefit to those who are not in that position, to inspire the hearts and the minds of conditioned souls, like what we're doing right now. Just hearing. So he exhibits, and then we can have reason for hearing, because he's displayed some pastimes. The blue lotus of his mouth blossomed by the slight rays from the sun of Yashoda's anger. Sounds like a line of poetry. The blue lotus of his mouth blossomed by the slight rays from the sun of Yashoda's anger. Shall I read it again? It's nice. The blue lotus of his mouth blossomed by the slight rays from the sun of Yashoda's anger. In the previous verse it was mentioned that he glanced about with fearful eyes. Kṛṣṇa is the enjoyer of the rasa of his pastimes. So he enjoys looking around fearfully, and he enjoys. So he does, because he enjoys. The Aishvarya, or power, of this same Kṛṣṇa solves what appears to be unsolvable in order to produce his desired rasa in the pastime, either on its own or by embracing him, that is, taking his consent. So the Aishvarya wants to create a secondary rasa of astonishment. Mother Yasoda sees what she sees, and she's astonished, which enriches her parental affection. So, knowing that Kṛṣṇa wants to inspire the love of Mother Yasoda, his opulence feature does what it does. And this is now happening for the second time. The second time means earlier, when Kṛṣṇa was younger, he yawned. Mother Yasoda was going to feed him, and little babies will do this sometimes. Baby yawned. And when he yawned, she looked inside his mouth, and she saw the same thing. And the same effect, astonishment. So her parental affection wasn't disturbed, but the opulences of Kṛṣṇa were acting on their own. So it says here, either with Kṛṣṇa's consent or just on its own, knowing what Kṛṣṇa wants, the opulence of Kṛṣṇa does what Kṛṣṇa wants. That's the Satya Sankalpa term. Thus his Aishvarya displayed the universe within him in order to nourish Yashoda's prema with astonishment, and in order to help her by making his words true when he said he did not eat dirt, by showing that everything exists within him, and by producing a different mood to erase Yashoda's anger. She forgot her anger. In the past time with Trinavarta, his Aishvarya made him heavy. it should be understood that his Aishvarya, with its inconceivable power to fulfill his desires, reaches its highest perfection in these acts. One of the principles of Sharanagati, which means taking shelter of the personality of Godhead, or anyone or anywhere, is recognizing that the place unto whom one is taking shelter has the power to protect one. You take shelter because one of the things is wanting protection. And the object that one takes shelter of, or the person that one takes shelter of, has the power to provide that protection. Or in the case of not just protection, but cultivation of a relationship with God. This is a nice theological point. Theology, as opposed to atheism, theology says there's God. That there's all kinds of different ideas of what God is. But the devotional conception of theology is God is meant for service. Just a little sharing. We have a international minister of communications. His name is Anuttama. So Anuttama, for years and years and years and years, has invested in Washington, D.C. area, which is where his home is, in reaching out to other religious organizations so that they can become more accepting of us, etc. Because, it's new. To a Judeo-Christian America, it's new. So who are these people? So just by being who he is, they became more accepting of us because he's so warm and cuddly. So, human and, good. He's good through and through. So he shared this with me, that one of the persons, kind of like one of the leading persons in this, what do they call it? Where religions get together and hold hands. What do they call that? Interfaith. So he said, one of the leading organizers said, in our Christian faith, we always speak about God loves you. But I really like that you're always saying we should serve God. And I'm going to start speaking like that. So by Anuttama's association, the concept is not just, you're a little baby, or you're depending upon God's love to make your life whole. But turn it around. You become a little more mature. Okay, I'm receiving everything from mom and dad. Let me do something for them. Let me do something for God. Let me be situated in my relationship of serving him, not just receiving from him. And that's a more mature conception of God. That he is, by nature, who are we? We're parts of the Supreme, and the part is meant to serve the whole. So we serve the whole. We serve God. And that's what we do. I mean, whether you're a theist or an atheist, you're serving others. And the perfection, mature perfection of that is service to God. And that's the relationship, that's our identity. And then there's varieties of moods. And that the person who we're serving knows exactly what our mood is, and he reciprocates with our mood without even making an effort to do it. His opulences just move And that's the picture of why there is material creation, and it's the picture of the spiritual world, of things that happen in this world and things that happen in the spiritual world. It's the nature of God. He's a loving person. We were hearing this afternoon. Bhaktavatsala. Of all the characteristics of the Supreme Person, he's very affectionate to his bhaktas. And he does things simply on that basis. That is, his satya sankalpa potencies just start moving here and there because of a desire of his devotee. So you better watch out what you desire, because you just might get it. And then if you get it, it may be, you may become distracted by getting it and then trying to be the enjoyer of it, the thing that you got. So, very important what you're desiring. And to the purified stage of desire is where there isn't a material desire. There's this question, if Kṛṣṇa is the Supreme, and his associates in Vrindavan are dearmost to him, then why do they live so simply? I mean, in other words, he wants them to be happy, so why not they're living in palaces and opulent life, etc., etc.? Why simple rustic life? Doesn't seem right. And then, further, all trees are desire trees. All the cows are wish-fulfilling cows. All the land is made of chintamani. It just can fulfill. In the way Bhakti Chaitanya Swami describes, practically everything can deliver practically anything in Goloka. So why is it so simple? Because they don't have material desire. Whatever they have desire for from the desire trees is for service to Kṛṣṇa. They don't have any other desire. They don't have any other desire. And Kṛṣṇa doesn't have any other desire. So the life of simplicity is the life of Vraja. But there's abundance. And sometimes there's danger, apparent danger. But that's just to intensify the shelter-taking mood. And then Kṛṣṇa deals with whatever the obstacle is or the difficulty is. And it's just loving exchange and loving exchange and loving exchange. It's not a world of utopia, it's a world of loving exchange. There's a nice little Prabhupada story. Long ago, in New York, there was a devotee who eventually became a disciple of Prabhupada, but he was Iranian, still is, he's still alive. And his occupation was, he was an accountant, like a highly placed financial consultant kind of person. When he read Prabhupada's books, he became very attracted and started visiting the temple. And so the temple then invited him, why don't you oversee our accounting? Because that's, peanuts for somebody on the scale of what he's accustomed to do. And when he looked at the accounting, he was shocked. And he told Prabhupada in a letter, whatever, I didn't read the letter, but it's shocking. How money is being spent and how money is being accounted for and not being accounted for. And Prabhupada's reply I saw the reply. The reply was, don't expect utopia. I mean, he got on the case of the person that was not properly spending the money. He wasn't like embezzling or something, but he wasn't wisely spending money. So he corrected the person, but he wrote a letter to a Trey Rishi saying, don't expect in ISKCON there's going to be utopia. Even in the spiritual world, there's not utopia. And he gave as an example, Kṛṣṇa sometimes, seeing Srimati Radharani, his mind becomes addled, and he goes into the pasturing ground and starts to milk a bull. So even in the spiritual world, it's not utopia. And then he got on the case of the person that was not wisely spending money. So we don't find utopia, we find loving exchange, which is the spiritual world. And Kṛṣṇa has all, the message we're getting here in this little section, he has all potencies to do anything at any time. He doesn't have to lift a pinky. He doesn't have to undergo any effort at all. At any stage of his pastimes, this is a childhood, very young, not even yet 3 years old, pastime, and he's showing the universe within his mouth. So, and again, the purpose is, without disturbing your parental affection, to enhance the parental affection with astonishment, and then also to show everything is within him, showing us. Everything is within Kṛṣṇa, and Kṛṣṇa is within everything. Andantarasta paramanu charantarastam. Through pastime, he's displaying what the scripture says. So, next time we're going to visit, we're going to see or hear what he saw, what she saw, what this universal form is. And just a little prelude to what we're going to be discussing next time. I've been a few times already, but the universal form is something that's quite mysterious. And one of the things that's mysterious about it is there's different experiences of the same thing. What Mother Jasoda saw is different than what Arjuna saw, is different than what was displayed in the royal assembly in Mahabharata, is different from what Brahma saw in chapter 13 of this 10th canto. Brahma saw all the universes plural. I mean, how can you do that? How can you see even one universe? Too vast. How can you see one universe? What to speak of? And the description is somewhat different. We're going to go through it next time. Then there's descriptions that come in Scripture, different than what persons directly experience. And they're somewhat different. And they're somewhat different, and they're somewhat different, and it's all the same thing. It's the universe, the form of the universe, the Virat Rupa. So different people, it's not uncommon that different people can experience the same thing in a different way. And even the same person can experience the same thing in a different way at different times, depending upon consciousness. So it's mysterious, the universal form. So we'll spend a little time with that. I want to read some of the sections of Canto 3 and Canto 2 in addition to what we're going to be reading, what Mother Jasoda sees. And then how she processes what she sees. Because her relationship with Kṛṣṇa is different than Arjuna's relationship with Kṛṣṇa. So Arjuna is like, please remove this form. Show me original form. And that's not Mother Jasoda's response. Okay, we'll hear. Different rasas, different relationships with Kṛṣṇa. As he's showing his Aishvarya at will. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. We'll start with, you're going to have to unmask yourself. But we'll start with the people in the room, and if there's after that, we'll go to the online questions.
Where does Jesus fits in the Krishna consciousness?
Where does what?
Jesus.
Where does Jesus fit into this picture?
In the Krishna consciousness.
In Krishna consciousness.
Overall, yeah.
Well, interesting that you ask. I just requested, I have a website, and I came across an answer to a very, very detailed, well-researched, scriptural answer to your question, and it's just now posted on my website. But it's under, I don't know what it's under, but he'll remind me, and I'll send him the link, then he can send you the link so you can find out exactly where it is. But a short answer is exactly, where does he fit? It's exactly what is said in the Bible is where he fits. God the Father hath sent me. So he's of the spiritual realm, sent by God to give God's message. That's called avatar. It's a specific category. You know the meaning avatar? One who descends. Avatar. It's the meaning. So he is in the category, there's 6 kinds of avatars, and he falls under one of those 6 called Shakti Avesha. Shakti Avesh. Avesha means invested with potency of God. A living entity, a jiva. He's not God, not Vishnu. He's jiva, invested with powers of God to do a certain task. And his task was to give God's message. But sometimes there's other empowerments. Here's some examples. The 4 Kumaras are invested with the Lord's Jnana Shakti. Brahma is empowered with God's creative potency, Srishti Shakti. Prithu Maharaj is invested with the Lord's ruling potency, Palana Shakti. Those are examples, there's more. Shakti Avesh avatars. So Prabhupada has spoken of Christ as he's a Shakti Avesh avatar. He's a living entity empowered by God to do God's work. So in terms of category, it's avatar. He's an incarnation of the Supreme. But he's a jiva. He's not Vishnu, but carrying out a function of Vishnu, revealing his message, delivering the message of love of God. Kṛṣṇa can do it himself, and sometimes Kṛṣṇa sends others. That's where he fits in. And he knew his audience. So according to his audience, he spoke. And he had a rough audience. And for giving what he gave, which by his own words was less than everything. In his words, there's so much more I have to tell, but you cannot bear to hear. So he was restrictive what he said, just like when you teach children, you don't, you have to keep things simple, because that's their capacity. So knowing the capacity of his audience, he spoke simple things. Don't kill. Thou shalt not kill. Anyway, etc. Love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. Love your neighbor as yourself, and certain other things. They're core to his teaching. Compassion, forgiveness, mercy. Those are qualities. That's not the perfection, but there's qualities that are in the direction of the perfection. The values that align when one's heart is connected in service to the love of God. Anything else?
Maharaj, I watched the Prabhupada's video. We were discussing about that.
Which, the Hare Krishna movie?
Yes. One thing that I saw in that, which we also have read in the Leelamrita and other books, is at that time the Americans were searching for something. There was a longing, even though they had so many other things. They didn't want that. The parents were rich. They didn't want that. They were looking for something. But my observance in today's world, at least with whomever I am seeing, Americans especially, there is absolutely no longing. When January 1st comes, they have a whole plan of when they will take vacation, where they will go, what they will do. Everything is planned. And they are only after enjoyment. When they go to the churches, when I discuss with them, they say, we are donating, we are helping poor, that's what the church is telling us, we are doing that, and we are religious. So it's very difficult to cut through them because they are already closed, is what I am feeling. How is it overall, and is it something that everybody is seeing, or just me?
Well, that's it's a sociology question, not just a theology question. And even in different generations of people, there's differences. Some of the people in the generation that you're speaking about, they're more open. Some are more closed. Now, I'm not a sociologist, but my subjective experience particularly with younger generation people, there's generational types. And there was a period, maybe 20 plus years, where it was the narcissistic generation, and there was very much interest in material security and very little interest in spirituality. The newer generation of youth are searching far more, and they're searching in different ways. It's just times change. The pendulum goes this way and the pendulum goes that way. Tendencies among people change, and it generally is degradation. But the times that Prabhupada came was a very unique time. It's not the same today. But in the younger generation today, there's much more inquisitiveness. They want to know. No, it doesn't it's not exclusive to younger generation people. There's older generation people that also want to know that aren't fixed like you just described. Because you're mixing with a certain group of people that are fixed in a certain way. Then even amongst those people, there are some people that aren't, they're in those same corporate positions, but they're not satisfied with it. They have other interests, and they have a different way of going about it, and so on. Let's say one other thing. The younger generation people, their conviction is not in the authenticity of something, but the experience of that something. One college student said it this way: the religion today is, don't show me authority says or tradition says. I'm not moved by that. I'm moved by, I want an experience. And if I can't experience it, I'm not interested. And therefore, yoga, they experience something. Kirtan, they experience something. They don't know what it is. And they don't have any discrimination about should it be this or that or the other. It's just there's something about it that they like the experience. So that attracts them. There's diversity. Some people want to know, answers to why questions, not just what questions. So, and that curiosity is higher in the present younger generation than it was for 20, 25 years. They just weren't asking the, why questions. Or even wanting experience. They just wanted security. And, there's no security out there. So that kind of faded. Anyway. Sociology moves in waves. That's been my experience. I'm not a sociologist. But the tendencies of people affect people. We're conditioned by those with whom we associate.
But that statement, when you said that one student said, show me experience, but don't tell me authority.
It's not one student said. The student said that's their observation of what's going on amongst young people today. That's the new religion of today. I don't want to be part of an ism. I don't want to accept, wisdom literature says, no thank you. I mean, there's others that have another point of view, but that's this person's observation.
But isn't that every religion, sect, whatever this kind of yoga, that kind of yoga, this one, that one, everything gives some sort of experience.
That's why it's become popular.
What I'm saying is, anything that gives some sort of experience, they will be stuck into that. If they don't come from the authority perspective that this is our goal of life, then their life will it not be, I'll say it not be wasted, but it will not be delayed.
Oh yeah. So that, that's a ship without a rudder. That's pretty dangerous. So, are we saying the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So my question is then, what are we as ISKCON trying to do in those? How are we attracting the American?
It depends on. This is my experience. There are different groups, and so there's different strategies for different groups. One of the general strategies is something that they get an experience with, through yoga and kirtan. And then they're interested in some other things. So we connect with, overcoming negative emotions. I mean, that's a big one, because there's lots of negative emotions out there. And, they and their friends are going through negative emotions. So how to handle it? So that's something they're interested in. So that all of those three, there's others, and others and others. It just leads into who are you? What's the foundation of who you are? Some people just they're not ready for philosophy. They just want an experience of being free from emotion, negative emotion. But the more serious and thoughtful ones, and consciousness becomes purified, then they're ready. So it's a strategy that leads to study of Bhagavad Gita. That's where it goes, in more serious chanting. But the bhakti process that leads to fulfilling, that higher experience. It's like yesterday evening, the consciousness conversation, higher consciousness.
Can I share one more thing?
Yeah.
So, in my company, there was a seminar. Some lady came and gave. It was about to be happy, in our life. How to be happy in our life. So I was thinking I should attend it. I just want to see what they are saying. And basically the essence was, every day have gratitude that I am today living, I am healthy, I am getting nice food, I have so many, my daughter, son, wife, husband, some gratitude, not to God though. I mean, she didn't mention the word God, but
of course not.
Write a gratitude journal. And another thing is what do you like the most? Do that every day. That gives you energy. And in your workplace, try to find a job that way. And then she gave some examples that, so and so was not happy and moved the job, and now so this was the essence. And she went and got trained in India, she said, and all those things. So after the seminar, I went and spoke to her and said, how about the modes of material nature? And she said, I don't know anything about it. So she didn't hear anything about that. And she just very basic but very popular. She's going to various corporates and giving seminars, and I was really struck that people were appreciating her. So the level of understanding that people have is so low.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Well, that's another strategy. It's giving what people are looking for, and then Kṛṣṇa comes out of the box. Because it's impermanent without something that's of a permanent nature. So this is value education, is what it's called. Value education. It's not only in India. India is one of the places, but God has disappeared, and it's just value education. But it's not sustainable. Those that are involved in it, that are honest, it's not sustainable without God in the picture. So you connect the value, like this iceberg picture, the tip of the iceberg, and below the surface of the water, iceberg, and then the bottom. The bottom is the spiritual part. The part above that is the values. The part above that is behaviors. So she's speaking behaviors that connect with some values. Gratitude is a value, and it is power. You feel power when you feel gratitude. You feel good. You have a good feeling. And it promotes love and acceptance of others and connection with others instead of the isolation mode of, material life. It gives you a little, mode of goodness feeling. But it's not sustainable, because there's no bottom of the iceberg. There's no unchanging reality. Values may change, and behaviors may change, but there's some unchanging things. And what are those? Without that rootedness and unchanging things, it's incomplete. It's always going to be incomplete. So that's where, speakers that are speaking to the modern audience connect. They teach values. It's like, the Gita values, that topic. There's a reason why it was chosen for those of you two. There's a topic that Oxford University and some Hare Krishna devotees got together and presented. So I've been teaching this in colleges. It's Gita values. Values is something they can relate to. And then, it makes the connection when you ground it in spirituality. That's another approach, because you're asking strategies. Something that's meaningful to the audience that connects them with that which is sustaining and enduring, that spirit. Then you can give it different names because people don't like the God word, so you just give it different names. The place of higher consciousness, that's what I use. Okay.
One online question.
Okay.
This question is from Hari from Boston. Would the various followers of Jesus also attain Vaikuntha or Goloka?
Rupanuga did you see the David Susskind show? Did I send that to you, that link? Back in the 70s, there was a television show called the David Susskind Show, and he invited the Hare Krishna devotees. Rupanuga was the president of the New York Temple at the time, so he was sitting right next to David Susskind. So, and I'm in the audience. So this is a TV studio. So he wrote a letter to Prabhupada asking what you're asking. When someone becomes a perfect Christian, where was their destination? And in that particular letter, he said, to find a perfect Christian is very rare. But if there was such a person, they would attain Brahmaloka, where they could then perfect their life of devotion and go back to Godhead. Now, they don't have to perfect their life of devotion, because Christ taught largely about heaven. And we know heaven isn't the same as Vaikuntha. So those that are living a life of goodness go to the place of goodness, Swargaloka. But a perfect Christian will go to, this is what Prabhupada said. Then there's another situation where Prabhupada was asked, Rukmini, Anuttama's wife, asked Prabhupada, is there such a thing as Christ Loka? And Prabhupada said, there's so many lokas, why not Christ Loka? But it doesn't mean Vaikuntha. Now the ideal, let's just say Saint Francis or Saint something that actually achieved a very, very, very high level of a life of devotion to God with complete humility and respect for all living entities and so forth. By the mercy of the personality of Godhead, He may take them to Him. But that's not a general rule. Okay? No, online? That's it. Okay. Last chance back there. Anything? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Swami Maharaj ki jai.